Over the past week, there's been major news revolving around the Walt Disney Company. Activist investor Dan Loeb called for Disney to permanently cut their dividend, and the company just announced a major reorganization plan to focus on streaming. Last month, I did a full stock review on Disney and announced that I'm planning to build a large position in the company long term. So in this video, I'm going to break down all this news and share how it impacts my thoughts on investing in Disney stock. My name is Zach, and you should leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the video. 2020 has been a rough year for Disney. The economic shutdowns have forced most of their parks to close for extended periods of time. In fact, Disneyland in California is still closed with no indication as when it will be allowed to open again. As of 2019, the park sector represented 37% of their total revenue and is a huge part of the business. These park closures have led to a large amount of layoffs and a temporary suspension of their semi-annual dividend. However, not all of this year's developments have been negative. As of August 2020, Disney Plus has more than 60.5 million subscribers, which has blown past the company's initial projections of between 60 to 90 million subscribers by the end of 2024. This growth was likely accelerated by the pandemic, but indicates opportunity for their direct-to-consumer business. As the parks reopen and business slowly returns to normal, there are two main questions. How focused is the company on streaming, and when will they bring back their dividend? As I mentioned earlier, Disney suspended their H1 dividend due to the significant business disruptions they were facing. Since then, it's been assumed the company will bring back the dividend as soon as the parks are operational again. However, that idea has recently come into question. On October 7, 2020, activist investor Daniel Loeb wrote a letter to the CEO Bob Chapek arguing that Disney should permanently suspend their dividend in order to invest in streaming. He states, "To further capitalize on this opportunity, we believe the company should permanently suspend its $3 billion annual dividend and redirect this capital entirely into content production and acquisition for Disney's direct-to-consumer businesses centered around Disney+." Given that this is a dividend investing focused channel, you probably assume I think this is a bad move. However, I agree with a good amount of his points. The basis of the argument is that by not having the dividend, the company could double its Disney Plus original content budget. He claims, "These incremental dollars would, based on our analysis, generate returns that are multiples the stock's current dividend yield by driving the high lifetime value subscribers to your direct-to-consumer platform." Additionally, Loeb argues, beyond bringing additional subscribers onto the platform, increased velocity of dedicated content production will deliver several knock-on benefits spread across your existing base, including elevated engagement, lower churn, and increased pricing power. He goes on to say that this heavy investment in content would allow Disney to separate itself from other traditional entertainment companies and let it directly rival and even surpass companies like Netflix. I agree with the principle behind all these arguments, but some of his points I'm less excited about. He argues that Hulu, ESPN Plus, and Starz should all be collapsed into Disney Plus. I don't think this is a good move, at least at the moment. These services are clearly catered to different audiences and have unique business models. Later in the letter, Loeb quotes Warren Buffett to finish off his argument. "Companies get the shareholders they deserve. Disney deserves growth-minded, long-term oriented investors." In my opinion, this part was a weak argument. I'd say that dividend investors are often far more long-term and committed than growth-minded investors. If he wanted to quote Buffett, there's a much better line of argument he can use. In fact, I will do so right now. Here's a clip of Buffett discussing how a company should decide whether or not to pay out a dividend.
In terms of not paying dividends, we don't pay dividends because we think we can turn every dollar we retain into more than a dollar of market value. I mean, the only reason for us to keep your money is if it becomes worth more by us keeping it than it would be worth if we gave it to you. And if we can create more than a dollar of market value for every dollar we keep, you're better off whether you want to take that dollar out by selling a little piece of your stock or whether you continue to leave it in. That's the test. If we come to the conclusion that we can't do that, and we could come to the conclusion sometime, then we should distribute it to you. The interesting thing is, we're in certain businesses, for example, See's Candy being one. We don't have a way to intelligently use all of the money that See's generates within the See's Candy Company. So if See's were a standalone company, it would pay very large dividends. Not because it just had some dividend paying policy, it would be simply because we wouldn't have a way of using, in this case, $30 million a year intelligently in expanding that business. The Buffalo News is the same way. We don't have a way of using money within that specific business intelligently to use the money that it generates. We hope that in the overall Berkshire Hathaway scheme of things, that we can intelligently use the money that the companies in aggregate generate for us. And we think so far we have, and we think the prospects are reasonably good that we can continue to do that. But dividend policy should really be determined by that criteria, also bearing in mind the possibilities of repurchase of stock too, but they should be determined by whether a dollar left in the business is worth more than to the shareholder than a dollar paid out.
There you go. Buffett argues the company should not pay a dividend if they think they can get a greater return by reinvesting that money back into the business. That actually perfectly fits into Mr. Loeb's argument as well. So what do I think of Daniel Loeb's letter? Well, I agree that Disney Plus should be the primary focus of the company and get substantial investment. However, I don't see that statement being mutually exclusive with them paying a dividend. Disney is a huge company with many different streams of revenue. Additionally, they have a key competitive advantage over many others in the streaming space. They already own the content. Disney owns some of the top brands in the world, such as Marvel, Star Wars, and Pixar. They already produce this content at a massive scale. Disney simply doesn't need to spend as much as companies like Netflix, which started from nothing. I think that Disney's path to streaming dominance is going to involve a sizable investment in original content, but look more like restructuring the existing content production budgets towards Disney Plus and the direct-to-consumer model. Based on recent news, this seems to be exactly what Disney is doing. On October 12th, the Walt Disney Company announced a major reorganization effort to focus on streaming. CEO Bob Chapek explains this effort in a recent interview.
Bob, thanks so much for joining us on the heels of this big news. We really appreciate it. Give us a sense of the goal of this reorganization and what you think it'll accomplish.
Well, what we want to do, Julia, is accelerate our transition to a real direct-to-consumer priority company. We believe that we've got the opportunity to build upon the success of Disney Plus, which by almost any measure has been far and above anybody's expectations, and really use this to catalyze our growth and increase shareholder wealth.
What does it say about the success of Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, and Hulu? Can you give us any sense of new subscriber numbers or what your guidance is for growth of those services?
Well, I can't provide any guidance on future numbers, but what I can say is that in every territory, for every platform, our expectations have been exceeded and exceeded every month. So we're thrilled with the way it's going, and we just think that this reorganization is going to catalyze growth even further.
Well, we hope we will get some new Disney Plus numbers when you report your earnings. But one question we have is, we've seen the acceleration of a lot of trends due to COVID, more streaming, obviously movie theaters are shut down. How much of this change and this reorg is really a response to what is happening because of COVID and what has changed over the past 6 months?
Yeah, I would not characterize it as a response to COVID. I might say that COVID accelerated the rate at which we made this transition, but this transition was going to happen anyway, because essentially what we want to do is separate out the folks who make our wonderful content based on tremendous franchises from the decision making in terms of where the prioritization is in terms of how it gets commercialized into the marketplace. And what we want to do is leave it to a group of folks who can really see objectively across all the constituents that we have, the various different considerations that we've got, and make the optimal decision for the company, as opposed to somehow having it be predetermined that a movie is destined for theaters or that a TV show is destined for ABC. So really what we want to do is provide some level of objectivity and really make it a decision that benefits the overall company and its shareholders.
Now, what's interesting is this new division, which will be run by Kareem Daniel, is going to be responsible for deciding what goes to these businesses that you've had long-term relationships with. So that's the TV bundle, what's going to go on TV versus digital, and what's going to go into theaters versus digital. And the digital is really Disney Plus. What message are you sending to your partners, to the cable distributors, and to the theaters about how much more important Disney Plus is than your relationships with them?
I think what it says is that we're putting the consumer first, Julia. The consumer is actually going to be who's going to make this decision. They're going to lead us with the way that they make their transactional decisions. And right now they're voting with their pocketbooks, and they're voting very heavily towards Disney Plus. And so what we want to do is make sure that we're going the way that the consumers want us to go. And as you had mentioned, certainly COVID has, impacted all of our traditional distribution businesses, but this is even more than reactionary. This is really progressive. This is looking out with a vision towards where we see the world going and how we see that consumers are interacting with Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, and Hulu, and where it's going to go in the future in our international business with Star. So we're trying to, as they say, skate to where the puck is going to be.
Tell us specifically about your relationship with the movie theaters. You released Mulan internationally. Here in the U.S., you charge $30 for Disney Plus subscribers. You just announced that you're going to be releasing Soul, a Pixar movie, free for Disney Plus subscribers, pulling it out of theaters. How committed are you to the theatrical release model, and how different are things going to be now that you've done this reorganization?
Yes, as you know, we've benefited from a tremendous relationship with theatrical exhibition for many, many, many years. As dynamics change in the marketplace, though, we want to make sure that we're giving consumers who want to go to theaters to experience everything that a theatrical release can give them. We want to make sure that we continue to give them that option. But at the same time, there's a lot of consumers that want to experience a movie in the safety, comfort, and convenience of their own home for whatever reasons they do. So we want to make sure that, again, that we put the consumer first, and the consumer is going to be making the decision in terms of how they consume our media, as opposed to some arbitrary decision that we may make from a distribution standpoint. So we want to look at ourselves as consumer enablers.
Fewer films in theaters? Does it mean you're going to want to do something more like the day and date releases, or that Universal experimented with, or the 17-day window that Universal agreed on with AMC? What does the future of theatrical look like then?
Well, I think you're going to hear a lot more on December 10th when we have our next investor conference. We plan to share a lot more details in terms of how this strategy and how this reorganization then translates into business actions. And so I look forward to sharing a lot more on December 10th.
This is exactly what Disney should be doing. They are moving their entire entertainment engine towards supporting the direct-to-consumer model. It gives them a greater level of control and increases the scalability of their content distribution. Also, the subscription model provides a reliable and consistent revenue source. My prediction is that Disney Plus in the long term will actually surpass Netflix in subscribers, and possibly by a wide margin. If they choose to keep the dividend, then I think the company will be able to grow it significantly over the next few decades. With this in mind, I'm planning on Disney being a part of my long-term dividend stock portfolio, and will continue investing in the company. However, if they choose to abandon their dividend policy, it doesn't change my attitude towards the company at all. I'll likely continue to invest and just move the stock into my growth portfolio. Right now I own 15.09 shares of Disney at a price per share of $108.10. My plan is to continue my monthly dollar cost averaging strategy and picking up more shares whenever I can lower my cost per share. Thank you for watching Dividend Data. I'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you follow me on Twitter, link in the description, you can get real-time updates of my buys and dividends coming in. You can support the channel on Patreon and be a part of making these videos happen. The link is in the description. Please leave a comment below, and thank you for watching.